The parking garage echoed with her heels, sharp, deliberate, unapologetically loud, against the concrete. Brielle Langford didn't walk. She moved like she owned every inch of space she passed through, which in most cases was true. CEO of Langford Technologies, she'd closed a $240 million acquisition before lunch and fired 2 VPs before dinner, all while wearing 4-inch stilettos and a tailored navy pantsuit that cost more than most people's rent. The problem was, she didn't feel any of it. She pressed the key fob, and her silver Aston Martin chirped in the corner. Spot P1, reserved. Only her car was here now. Executive hours ended hours ago. Most people rushed home. She lingered. Again. The silence pressed in. She paused. A faint noise, footsteps, quick ones, then stopping. She turned, scanning the dim lines of concrete and parked cars, her breath catching without her permission. Too slow to be a jogger. Too soft to be security. Her chest tightened until a voice called out. "Excuse me, Miss Langford." The tone was firm, but calm. Not urgent, not threatening. She turned again. A man stepped out from behind a maintenance cart. Tall, plain gray work shirt, navy work pants, an old ID badge clipped to his collar, Cal Beckett Night Crew. He held up both hands, palms out. "Sorry if I startled you. I was just about to leave." She relaxed a fraction. "It's fine," she said, trying to read him. He nodded toward her car. "Saw someone circling the structure about 20 minutes ago. Didn't look like they belonged. Didn't get close, but I figured you'd want to know." Her brows pulled together. "Did you tell security?" He hesitated. "I'm not exactly in the loop. Night staff doesn't have that kind of access." She looked at him more closely now. His shirt was neat, face clean-shaven. No stammering or nervous tics. Just quiet, steady presence. "I appreciate it," she said. He nodded once. "Have a good night, Miss Langford." And then he turned to walk away, back into the shadows near the stairwell. She stood still for a beat longer than she should have. Watching. Curious. Because for a man with mop water on his shoes, he had the calm of someone who'd spent a long time knowing when to speak and when not to. The kind of calm you didn't fake. Across town, in a small second-floor apartment that smelled faintly of cinnamon oatmeal and lemon cleaner, Cal Beckett quietly slipped off his work boots and set them by the door. The hall light flicked on. Daddy, a sleepy voice. Bare feet padded across the laminate floor. "Hey, Maisie," he said softly. "You're supposed to be in bed." She wrapped her arms around his leg, eyes half closed. I waited. "You promised we'd finish the puzzle?" He sighed and scooped her up. "One piece, then bedtime." She nestled her head against his shoulder. "Promise. Promise." They sat on the old couch in the living room. A half-finished jigsaw of a mountain sunrise lay on the coffee table. Maisie picked up a piece and stared at it like it might come alive if she focused hard enough. "Here." Cal guided her hand and fit it in place. "Perfect." She beamed. "We're almost done." He smiled, but his mind was far away. On Brielle Langford's expression. She hadn't been scared exactly, but something had flickered there. A glitch in the system, a crack in the armor, and something else he'd felt it. That old instinct he hadn't used in years, watching for patterns, reading the air, noticing what most people missed. She'd been followed. Or she was being watched. One or the other. And if either was true, it wasn't random. Maisie yawned. "All right, kiddo. Bed." He carried her down the hallway to her room, laid her gently beneath her unicorn comforter, and clicked on the nightlight. A warm pink glow spilled across her cheeks. "Daddy," she whispered, already drifting. "Yeah, were you a superhero before?" He smiled at the ceiling. "Something like that." She smiled too, eyes closing. "You're still one." He closed the door softly behind him, heart aching in the quiet. The next morning, Brielle Langford sat in her corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Savannah River. The office was stunning. Sleek, designed for intimidation. But it was empty. Always had been. She sipped lukewarm coffee and stared at the paused security footage on her laptop. She'd pulled it herself. No one else needed to know. Yet. She zoomed in. There, a blurry frame. Cal Beckett, night janitor. He had moved without panic, stood just out of view but close enough to intervene. Said the exact right thing to settle the moment. And now she couldn't stop thinking about that moment. That someone she'd never noticed in 2 years had quietly been watching and keeping order in the background. Her phone buzzed. Luis Alvarez, facilities manager. She answered. "Yes, hey, Brielle. Just letting you know I checked the access logs. Someone used a vendor badge to get into the garage last night. No appointment scheduled. Who's still checking? The badge ID belongs to a courier company that went out of business last year." She exhaled slowly. "Let me know when you find out more." He hesitated. "You think someone was trying to get to you? I think someone thought I wouldn't notice." She ended the call and stared out the window. Her reflection floated in the glass, flawless makeup-tailored lines, power in motion. And still, somehow, completely alone. At 7:12 p.m., Cal had just set down 2 plates of spaghetti when a low hum reached his ears. A car. A sleek silver Aston Martin pulled up to the curb outside his building. It didn't belong here. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Maisie's head popped up. "Is that the car Lady Cal's breath caught? Stay here, baby." He opened the door before she could knock. Brielle Langford stood in the dim hallway, a vision completely out of place. Sharp lines, bright eyes, not a single hair out of place, holding something that looked like a folder. "Mr. Beckett," she said. "I hope I'm not interrupting." He stared at her. "You parked your car here." "I did." He raised a brow. "Why, because I don't feel safe. And I think you noticed something last night that my security didn't." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "And you want what exactly? A conversation," she said. Then with a slight curve of her lips, and maybe some of that spaghetti. He blinked. She was serious. Maisie tugged on his hand from behind. "Daddy, you said we're supposed to help people when they knock." He looked down at her, then back up at Brielle. The most powerful woman in 3 states was standing on his doormat, holding a manila folder like a peace offering. He opened the door wider. "All right," he said quietly. "Come in." And just like that, the life he'd tried so hard to keep small got louder. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought matter to me either way. The last place Cal expected to find Brielle Langford was at his chipped Formica kitchen table, twirling spaghetti with a plastic fork. Maisie had given up half her seat for her pressing in close, like she'd just found a storybook character come to life. Brielle, for all her polished sharpness, hadn't flinched once under the 7-year-old's chatter. "This is where the fairies live," Maisie was saying, pointing to the butterfly stickers on the hallway wall. "They come out at night when everyone's asleep. Except Daddy. He's always cleaning." Brielle nodded with solemn grace. "I bet they appreciate that." Cal leaned against the fridge, arms folded, watching the scene, like someone who had stepped into the wrong dream. A billionaire CEO in $1,000 heels sitting next to his daughter in socked feet and mismatched pajamas. He cleared his throat. "I'm not sure what kind of conversation you were hoping for, Miss Langford." She turned her head, lips still curved slightly from whatever Maisie had just said. The kind where we're honest. That usually comes with context. She reached into the manila folder beside her plate, slid out a few photos and placed them on the table. That's my car. Last night, with a shadow near it. That badge that got scanned belonged to a courier company that shut down months ago. My head of security says it's probably nothing. And you don't think it's nothing. I think it's a test. Cal stepped forward, looked at the photos. Fuzzy, grainy, but enough to send a chill. Someone was watching. Not for theft. For timing. You could have called the police, he said. They'd take a report. They wouldn't solve anything. Your team should have caught this before you needed to. Brielle's jaw tightened. My team knows how to build firewalls, hire lawyers, scan keycards. They don't know how to see. There it was. Cal didn't reply. He knew what she meant. It's what he used to do back when seeing meant protecting lives, not just mopping marble floors. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. Maisie leaned her head on Brielle's arm, eyelids drooping. You smell like flowers and... the car store. Brielle let out a breath of laughter. That's... accurate. Cal waited until Maisie had fully nodded off, then gently carried her down the hall. He returned a minute later, rubbing the back of his neck. She doesn't usually warm up to people like that. She's special. He nodded once. So's her mom. Was. Brielle's expression softened, but she didn't offer sympathy. He appreciated that. So why are you really here? He asked finally. She looked at him, held his gaze like she wasn't used to being questioned. I've built everything I have by being smarter, faster, and less afraid than the people around me. But lately someone's been getting too close. Not just to me, but to my silence. He tilted his head. Your silence, my space, my routine, my assumptions. Her voice was measured, but a thread of something ran under it, uncertainty. Whoever they are, they're not trying to break in. They're trying to break the pattern. And I need someone who knows how to notice patterns. And that's me. You spotted them before they got close, and you didn't need a badge or a monitor to do it. Cal hesitated. His fingers tapped lightly against the table. I'm not a bodyguard. I clean baseboards. You weren't trained to clean baseboards. A long pause stretched between them. Cal sighed. I used to run a dojo before my wife got sick. I taught defensive arts, worked with law enforcement. That was a long time ago. Brielle didn't flinch. And now you take care of your daughter, quietly, efficiently, no fanfare. That's what life requires. No, she said gently. That's what grief requires. Life wants more. That stopped him. She hadn't said it like a dig. It felt honest, like she knew something about loneliness herself. Cal looked at her, really looked. Why don't you feel safe? Brielle leaned back slightly, the question brushing past her usual armor. Langford Technologies is preparing a platform expansion. It's sensitive. Billions involved. If we hit the launch deadline, we dominate a sector no one's cracked yet. And if you don't, investors panic. My board turns. I lose everything. He didn't ask how close she was to that edge. Instead, he asked the question that had been hovering since she knocked on his door. What do you want from me? I want you to observe. Quietly. No title. No badge. Just eyes. You see things others don't. And I don't trust anyone inside my circle right now. He stared at her for a long beat. You understand that I have a child. She's my life. I don't get involved in things that could blow back on her. That's why I came to you. She slid another folder across the table. Here's a non-disclosure. Temporary consulting agreement. You pick your hours. You report only to me. You don't carry anything. You just watch. He hesitated, fingers grazing the edge of the folder. Why trust me? Because you had the chance to make this about you last night. And you didn't. He opened the folder, eyes scanning the page. Straightforward. Legal. Surprisingly generous compensation. Enough to fix his radiator, maybe even save for Maisie's dental work next year. I'll think about it. I'd rather you didn't wait too long. She stood gathering her coat, moving like someone who hadn't let herself sit still for more than a few hours in years. At the door, she paused. She's a good kid. She is. Must have taken a good woman to raise her right. He swallowed. It did. Brielle met his eyes, her voice softer now. And a good man to keep it going. She stepped outside, and in the silence that followed, Cal felt the shift. This wasn't just about suspicion. It was about timing. About the quiet knocking of purpose after a long, long silence. He looked back at the table where her untouched glass of water still sat, catching light from the kitchen bulb. Something about the way it shimmered made his chest tighten. Maisie called softly from her room. Daddy. He walked to her doorway. Yeah, baby. That lady. She looked lonely. He paused. You think so? Maisie nodded sleepily. She didn't know how to eat spaghetti right. Cal smiled faintly. Not everyone does. She closed her eyes again, murmuring, maybe you can teach her. He watched her for a long time. And by the time he turned back to the kitchen, the folder was still there, waiting like a choice that already knew the answer. It rained the next morning. A soft, steady drizzle that turned Savannah's cobbled streets into mirrors. Cal stood in the doorway of Maisie's school, watching her shuffle into the crowd of colorful backpacks and soggy jackets, clutching her paper lunch bag like it held gold. Bye, Daddy, she called, waving her ponytail, already frizzing in the humidity. He smiled, lifting a hand. Be good. The door shut behind her, and the moment it did, the quiet settled again. It always did after he said goodbye. Like the world held its breath, waiting for him to decide who he was, without her in arm's reach. By 9:00 a.m. he was walking into Langford Technologies HQ. This time not with a mop bucket, not through the service entrance. The glass revolving doors parted silently as he stepped into the atrium, greeted by a chill of air conditioning and the low hum of polished success. Suits, lattes, directional lighting. No one looked twice at him except the woman at the reception desk, who paused just long enough to mark that he wasn't the usual crowd. His shoes squeaked slightly as he crossed the marble floor. The elevator opened with a soft chime. Floor 32. The executive level. He hadn't been here in over a year, and even then it was to buff the hallway after hours, not walk it in daylight. The doors parted, revealing a long corridor lined with frosted glass offices and soft carpet that absorbed footsteps. At the far end, Brielle Langford stood with her back to him, speaking quietly to a tall man in a dark blue suit. Her posture was effortless, shoulders relaxed, one hand on her hip, the other holding a tablet like it belonged there. She turned slightly, her profile sharp against the glass. Controlled, unbothered. Until her eyes found Cal. Then something shifted. Not in her face, but in her presence. A small pause, a flicker of softness. She said something to the man, who gave her a polite nod and walked away. Mr. Beckett, she said as he approached. Miss Langford. She gestured to a corner room. We'll talk in there. The room was mostly glass, except for a pale oak accent wall and a low, soft couch that didn't look like it had ever been sat on. She moved behind a sleek desk, but didn't sit. I wasn't sure you'd come. Cal gave her a steady look. I wasn't either. You signed the contract. I did. Any regrets? He paused. Not yet. She didn't smile, but something flickered again. Approval, maybe. Today's light. she said, sliding a folder toward him. Just observation. You'll accompany me to 2 meetings. Take note of who says what, who avoids eye contact, who seems too prepared or not enough. Patterns. Tells. And what exactly am I looking for? Doubt. Insecurity. Hidden motive. She paused. And anyone who seems too interested in me instead of the product. Cal opened the folder. Names, titles, briefs. Half of these people are your senior staff. I know, you don't trust them. I trust what they show me. That's not always the same as truth. He closed the folder and looked up at her. You always carry this much weight alone. Her voice didn't waver. Alone is where the sharp edges live. There was something in that line that pressed at him. Not pity, just recognition. He nodded once. All right. She studied him a moment longer, then added almost quietly, Thank you for coming. The meetings were like watching theater through one-way glass. Everyone smiled too hard, laughed half a second too late, flattered in polished ways that didn't sound like flattery unless you were listening for it. Cal sat quietly, taking notes, eyes moving not just across faces but across hands. Posture tension. How often someone checked the time or glanced at Brielle's expression. In the second meeting, a VP from marketing joked about needing another miracle quarter, and Brielle laughed politely, but Cal saw her eyes narrow just slightly. She didn't like that word, miracle. She wasn't here for miracles. She was here for control. When they stepped back into the hallway, Brielle let out a slow breath. That man, she said, has no idea how close he is to being reassigned. Too many compliments, Cal said. Too many questions about launch details. Too little understanding of what's actually at stake. They walked quietly for a moment. Then she asked, What did you notice? He thought about it. Your assistant doesn't like the CFO. The CFO knows it, but they're pretending not to notice each other's silences. She tilted her head. You caught that twice. When you were talking about the vendor contract, your assistant glanced at the CFO's hands. He closed his fists. When she brought up the timeline, he crossed his arms. They've got history, not the good kind. Brielle stared at him. What, nothing? You're good. He shrugged. You already knew that, or you wouldn't have shown up at my door. They stopped near the break area. Glass walls looked out over the Savannah skyline, gray and moody in the rain. She crossed her arms, her voice quieter now. Do you ever miss it, miss, what being in the room? Making decisions? He exhaled. Sometimes. But I don't miss the noise. Brielle nodded like she understood that more than he could know. A silence settled between them. Not awkward, not cold, just aware. Then a woman in a red blazer passed by and gave Brielle a smile too tight to mean anything. As soon as she was gone, Brielle muttered, That's Veronica Kane, head of investor relations. She's the one I'd bet against. Cal watched the hallway. You think she's behind the security breach? I think she's waiting for me to slip. Then don't. She glanced at him. You make it sound simple. Sometimes it is. Her lips parted slightly like she might say more, but her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, frowned. I need to step into a call. Cal nodded. I'll wait. She turned away, but paused. Do you want coffee? He blinked. Excuse me, coffee. You've been quiet, observant, thoughtful. That deserves caffeine. He let out a short laugh. I'm more of a tea person. Of course you are, she said, almost smiling. There's a cafe on the ground floor. Meet me in 15. He nodded. As she walked away, Cal leaned against the glass, staring at the city. Rain ran down the windows in uneven lines. The work was starting to get complicated. And so was the reason he'd agreed to be here. He told himself it was just a temporary job, a favor, a check to pay the bills. But even he wasn't buying that anymore. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me, either way. The cafe on the ground floor was warm and hushed with low lighting and soft jazz playing through overhead speakers. Cal sat by the window, tea steeping in front of him, watching the rain slow to a drizzle across the glass. Brielle arrived 5 minutes late, rare for someone who lived by precision, and without the usual shield of her tailored jacket. She wore a cream blouse, sleeves rolled, damp hair falling over one shoulder, like she hadn't bothered to fix it after her call. It made her look less like the CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm, and more like someone who just needed to breathe. "You're early," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "I'm always early." She glanced at his tea, then at the untouched second cup the server placed in front of her. "Coffee's too harsh some days," she murmured. "I ordered peppermint. Maybe I'm trying something new." Cal studied her face. There was a slight crease between her brows she hadn't had earlier. He didn't ask about it yet. "Long call long enough?" She stirred her tea absently. "The board wants an updated risk report, not security, just personal risks. Anything that could impact my image." "That sounds like they're worried. They're always worried. I'm a woman in power. They worry out of habit." He didn't argue. She leaned back slightly. "But something's changed. They're circling." Cal took a sip of tea. "Then you're right about someone inside pushing it." She nodded slow. "I didn't ask you here to talk strategy." He raised a brow. "I asked because you're different. Everyone else in my orbit wants something. You don't. That unsettles me. You don't like being unsettled. I don't like not knowing someone's angle." Cal set his cup down. "Maybe there isn't one." She looked at him across the small table. "Everyone has an angle. And what's yours?" Her expression softened, like she hadn't expected the question returned. "Right now, survival. But sometimes I wonder if that's just a prettier word for fear." That landed between them like a confession. Honest? Raw. He didn't fill the silence quickly. He let it breathe. "You've built an empire," he said finally, "but it's sitting on quicksand. That's what it feels like, doesn't it?" She nodded once. "And no one around you's willing to say it out loud. No one but you." A beat passed. Cal leaned forward slightly. "I get the sense you didn't come from money." Her eyes flicked up, surprised. "Why do you say that?" "You don't hoard luxury. You wear it like armor, not comfort. That's different." A small smile tugged at her mouth. "You watch everything. It's a habit I never unlearned." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "My father started Langford with one laptop and a loan from his brother. He was a genius with code, terrible with people. I was 12 when he told me, trust no one. Not even me." Cal blinked. That's heavy. He wasn't wrong. But it left a mark. She looked down at her tea. "I've been proving myself to ghosts ever since." A silence settled again. Not the awkward kind. The kind that forms when two people both stop pretending. Cal finally said, "You ever get tired every day?" Her voice was quieter now. "But I'm not allowed to show it. You just did." She met his eyes. "That's because I think you see me. Not just the position, not the car, not the press, just me." He didn't know how to answer that. Not with words. The pause was interrupted by the chime of Brielle's phone. She sighed and reached for it, frowning. "That's odd. What a calendar update I didn't approve. My lunch with Veronica got moved to today." "You trust her, not for a second. Then why meet with her alone?" She looked up. "Because I want to see if she slips." Cal leaned forward. "What's your gut say about her?" "My gut says she's the kind of person who keeps a drawer full of crisis plans, and one day you'll find out your name's been in one of them for months." He gave a low breath. "Then I'll be nearby." "You're not my bodyguard." "No. But I'm your eyes." She didn't argue with that. As she stood to leave, she paused beside the table. There's a gala this weekend. Charity event. Big names. Press. I need someone there who doesn't belong but sees everything. He looked up at her. You want me to wear a tux? She smirked. I want you to blend in and look like you don't want to be there. I can do that. Her gaze lingered for a moment longer than necessary. Thank you, Cal. And then she was gone. The door chimed softly behind her. He stayed seated for another few minutes, watching the way her reflection faded in the rain-streaked glass, the quiet ache of her words still circling in his mind. She was powerful, beautiful, impossibly guarded, and yet somehow in the middle of her chaos. She'd asked him to stay close. Not because he was strong, not because he was clever, but because he saw her. Cal adjusted the cuff of his shirt for the third time, staring at his reflection in the hotel lobby's grand mirror. The tuxedo fit better than he expected, tailored, clean, simple, and borrowed from Luis, who insisted he owned one from back when people still thought I looked good in black tie. Cal didn't argue. He'd had 2 days to prepare for this charity gala, but no amount of planning softened the feeling that he didn't belong. The hotel was one of Savannah's oldest, the kind of place with oil paintings, velvet drapes, and chandeliers made to impress. Everything smelled like money florals and just a hint of old wood. Across the ballroom, clusters of polished people stood laughing near a champagne bar, glittering gowns, sharp suits, money wrapped in manners. And there, just entering, was Brielle Langford. She wore navy, floor length, simple, elegant sleeveless with a high neckline that somehow made her look both regal and untouchable. Her hair was swept back, lips painted the color of a closing rose. The room shifted without realizing it. Conversations paused. Heads turned subtly, like they always did when power walked in. But Cal wasn't watching her dress. He was watching her shoulders, how they lifted just slightly as she crossed the threshold, like she was bracing for something, or hiding something. She caught his eye across the crowd. He gave her a small nod. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would draw attention. And yet she smiled only for a breath and made her way toward him. You clean up well, she said. You look like a storm in a room full of candles. She blinked, surprised. Then quieter. That's poetic? Didn't mean it to be. I know. That's what makes it land. Her eyes flicked to the corner of the room, where a group of investors were gathering near Veronica Kane, who stood in a deep emerald gown, drink in hand, smile poised like a weapon. She's working the room already, Brielle muttered. Let her, Cal said. We're not here to stop her. We're here to see who stops to listen. Brielle glanced at him. You're getting good at this. I was always good at it. I just stopped using it. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then gestured to a small table near the windows. Stay close. I'll do the rounds. You watch. As she moved through the crowd, Cal kept his distance, never far, never obvious. He noticed how some people touched her elbow too long when greeting her, others didn't meet her eyes. He noticed which names made her shoulders stiffen, which conversations she rushed and which ones she let linger. But it wasn't just business dynamics he was watching. It was her. The way she smiled for the camera, but lost it the moment the flash faded. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when nervous. The way her laugh always had a delay half a beat too late, like she was calculating it before releasing it. And still she carried the room. Veronica moved in, eventually, circling close. Cal watched their interaction like a silent film, tight smiles, clinking glasses, empty compliments. But then Veronica leaned in, said something that made Brielle's expression falter for just a second. That was it. 1 second. Enough for Cal. Later, after the speeches and the cameras, after the fake laughs and posed photos, Cal found Brielle on the veranda overlooking the garden. The night air was cooler, scented with night jasmine and the distant hush of the fountain. "You all right?" he asked. She didn't turn. She said, "It's brave to still be standing when you're this close to falling." That's a threat dressed as concern. Exactly. He moved to stand beside her, their reflections side by side in the tall window. She looked tired in the glass, still beautiful, but frayed at the edges. "You don't have to carry it alone," he said. "I do." "No, you've just done it for so long you forgot how not to." She turned then, eyes sharp. "Cal, this isn't just about a hostile takeover or gossip. There's something else. Files have gone missing. Access logs don't match badge reports. Someone has backdoors to our system and they're using them to scare me quiet. Why haven't you told the board? Because the board's not clean. And if I show weakness, I'm out. Then whoever's behind this wins." He let the silence stretch. "I'm not asking for protection," she added. "I know. I'm asking for clarity. I need to see who's hiding in plain sight." He nodded. "Then let me help you look." She watched him carefully, the way someone does when they're testing not your answers but your steadiness. She stepped a fraction closer. "You're different. I've been broken in quieter ways than most people notice." "That's not what I mean. Then what? You don't look at me like everyone else does. How do they look at you? Like they want to claim me, or fear me, or need something from me. And how do I look at you? Like you're still deciding." He smiled at that. "I am." A breath passed between them. Not rushed, not hesitant, just a breath full of the space where something could start. Then she said softly, "Stay for a while. After. When the event's over." He met her eyes. "What for?" She didn't answer right away. But her voice, when it came, held more weight than she intended to let show. "Because I don't want to walk back into silence tonight." And that, more than anything, was the truth. So he stayed. It was well past midnight by the time the ballroom cleared out. The glitter faded, the music quieted, and the air shifted from performance to aftermath. Cal walked beside Brielle through a private corridor that led to the side exit away from the main valet. Her heels echoed against the marble, the only sound between them for a long stretch. He held her wrap in his hand, offering it when the cool night air met them outside. She took it silently, wrapping it around her shoulders, but her posture remained tense. "I can still hear the music," she said softly, as if the echo clung to her skin. Like it doesn't want to let go. Cal glanced at her. "Or maybe you're not ready to let go of what you were pretending to be in there." Her smile was faint, but honest. "You really don't let people hide, do you? Not the ones worth seeing." A long silence passed as they stood beside the Aston Martin. The valet had left it at the side lot, discreet and out of sight. Brielle leaned against it, resting her head lightly on the roof. "I hate galas," she murmured. "Everyone wants something. Nobody means anything." Cal folded his hands in front of him. "You meant something to the young girl at table 12? The intern. She stared at you the whole speech, like you were the first person who made her believe she belonged in the room." Brielle blinked, turning toward him. "You saw that?" "Of course I did. She reminded me of me. Back when I used to hope more than calculate." "You still hope. Not out loud." They stood there beneath the buzz of a street lamp, the world just quiet enough to hear the rustle of leaves and the distant hush of the fountain in the courtyard. "I'm supposed to go home now," she said, "to a penthouse with 10-foot ceilings and a fridge full of catered silence." He didn't move. "I don't want to." Still, he waited. She looked at him, eyes shining with something she hadn't let show inside. "Come up." Cal held her gaze. "You sure I've never been more sure of anything this week? That wasn't a promise. It was a surrender. They rode the elevator in silence, the soft hum filling the space between them. Her place was high above the city glass walls, minimalist furniture, everything cold and perfect. But the view was something else. Endless skyline wrapped in darkness, scattered with lights that blinked like quiet confessions. Brielle kicked off her heels and stepped to the window, pulling the pins from her hair. It fell in soft waves, catching the light. You ever wonder, she said, if you built a whole life that looks good on paper but feels like nothing when you touch it? Cal didn't answer right away. He walked to the edge of the window and stood beside her. I built a life that fit my grief, he said. I didn't realize I'd outgrown it until someone knocked on my door with questions I wasn't ready to answer. She turned to him, her eyes searching. Why are you really here, Cal? He thought about Maisie. About the day he packed away his last belt and pads, folded the mats, and closed the dojo. About nights cleaning floors while his mind begged to still be useful. I was asleep for a long time, he said. Then I saw someone standing in a parking garage, holding everything together like it wasn't breaking. Her breath caught, and then slowly, like gravity was pulling them closer rather than choice. She stepped forward. I don't know how to be soft, she whispered. Not anymore. You don't need to be. I don't know how to let someone in without giving away too much. I'm not here to take anything from you. Their hands met. No rush, no performance, just skin against skin warmth between palms that had both carried more than they ever admitted. And then the moment passed. Not broken, just paused. She let go, first stepping back. There's something else, she said, voice quieter now. I didn't bring you into this just for intuition. Cal stayed still. I think someone on the board is working with a third party, not just leaking, coordinating. And tonight Veronica said something strange, about timelines, about preparing for my transition. He frowned. She's expecting you to step down, or be forced to. Do you have proof? Not yet. Just pieces. Fragments. But I need help connecting them. You think she's building something against you? I think it's already built. And someone's just waiting for me to crack so they can hand it over. Cal nodded. Then we get ahead of it. Her eyes met his again. You're not just a janitor anymore. I never was. A small smile tugged at her lips. I'm starting to realize that. They stood there in the silence, the city stretching wide beneath them, both of them knowing this wasn't just about work anymore. It was about something deeper. Something fragile. Something worth staying awake for. By Monday morning, the world had put its mask back on. Langford Technologies buzzed with the kind of tension that hummed beneath smiles. Everyone looked busy. Everyone spoke in clipped, efficient tones. And yet there was something off, a little too much eye contact in the elevator, a few too many closed-door meetings that weren't on the calendar. Cal moved through the building like a ghost with a name tag. Invisible to most, but not to Brielle. Never to her. She met him outside her office at 9:00 sharp, tablet in one hand, coffee in the other. Her hair was up her blouse, crisp, her heels sharp. But her eyes, that softness from the penthouse window, hadn't vanished. It had just tucked itself behind strategy. I need you with me this morning, she said, without even a hello. I've got a development meeting at 10. I suspect Veronica planted someone in product testing. Cal raised a brow. Planted. Not officially. But someone's been feeding updates to external parties. I found language from our internal proposal mirrored almost word for word in a competitor's pitch deck last week. You still haven't confronted anyone, no. You only confront when you're ready to end the game. I'm still gathering pieces. Cal walked beside her as they moved down the hall. You ever sleep briefly? I even dreamed of spaghetti and jigsaw puzzles. That made him stop walking for a second. She kept going, but looked back with a flicker of a smile. Maisie's still in your head, he said quietly, catching up. She's the first person who's made me feel liked, not needed, not feared, just liked. She has that effect. They stepped into the glass-walled conference room and the mood shifted immediately. 6 people sat around the table. Junior developers, marketing liaisons, and one man Cal had never seen before, mid-30s, expensive watch, 2 polished shoes. He sat back in his chair like it belonged to him. Brielle's voice didn't falter. Morning. Let's begin. Cal stood in the back, hands folded. Just another observer. But his eyes never left the man with the watch. His name was Evan Trammell. Newly transferred from a partner firm, hired on a contract Brielle hadn't personally approved, recommended by someone on the board. I'd like to walk through the revised launch schedule, Evan said smoothly, tapping his laptop. With the delays from systems integration, it makes more sense to push the beta window forward. We don't want the press getting wind of instability. Brielle tilted her head. We don't have instability. Not yet, he said with a quick smile. But we can't promise smooth integration with so many variables in play, and you're proposing what exactly that we leak a controlled preview to one of our media partners. Let them frame it positively before any real scrutiny begins. That's spin, Brielle said flatly. It's insurance. Her eyes narrowed. No, it's bait, and if someone takes it, we lose control of our message. Evan shrugged like it didn't matter. But Cal watched the way his hand curled tighter around his pen, the way his gaze flicked once toward the hallway behind the glass, like someone might be watching for his performance. Brielle didn't let him push further. She redirected the conversation, took the meeting back, but the damage had already whispered in. Afterward, back in her office, she paced. Evan Trammell didn't know our integration team had already stabilized the back-end API. He's working off outdated info, which means someone fed him wrong notes or he never had access to the right ones. You think he's bluffing on purpose? Cal asked. I think he's here to shake my footing, not to help me build anything. Cal leaned against the wall. You want me to follow him? No. That's too obvious. But I need to know who he's talking to when I'm not in the room. He didn't ask how she expected him to get close. He already knew. That afternoon, Cal dropped into the employee lounge, a neutral space filled with glass bowls of trail mix, overpriced coffee machines, and passive-aggressive sticky notes about microwave etiquette. Evan Trammell was there stirring cream into his coffee like he had nowhere to be. Cal sat 2 seats down. You always stir that long? He asked casually. Evan glanced over, smirked. Old habit. You the guy from Northex Consulting? That's me. You replaced Angela. She was sharp. Evan nodded. She didn't know how to play the long game. And you do, I know who wins it, he said, sipping. Not the person with the best product, the person who owns the story. Cal gave a slow nod. That's true in every room, especially in the ones where people like Brielle Langford pretend they're the hero. He said it low under his breath like it wasn't meant to be heard. But Cal heard it. He left 10 minutes later, pretending not to notice the smug look Evan gave him as he walked out. That night, Cal sat on his couch laptop, open Maisie, fast asleep under her blanket fort. He reviewed the footage from the building's interior cameras, some legal, some borrowed. Evan had met with Veronica 3 times that day, once in the hallway, once by the elevator, once in the parking garage, each time too short for coincidence, too practiced for comfort. The pattern was building. Clearer now. Cal pulled out his phone and typed a message to Brielle. They're moving faster than you think. Trammell's not guessing. He's delivering, she replied 2 minutes later. Then we don't wait. We set the trap. Cal stared at the screen, heart steady, mind racing. They were no longer watching the game unfold. They were in it. Together. The following morning, Langford Technologies buzzed louder than usual. Something was in the air, a subtle shift, too many polite smiles, Too many people pretending they weren't watching for something. Brielle stood at her office window, arms crossed, staring down at the plaza below, as if the answers she needed might be walking through the front doors. Cal stood a few steps behind her, reviewing a paper she'd slid across the table an hour earlier. "Project Zephyr," he said aloud, tapping the header. This wasn't in the main files. No, it's buried in an auxiliary folder disguised as a research white paper. Only 4 people in the company know it exists. Evan isn't one of them. Until now. She nodded. "I updated the access metadata this morning, from his account, subtly, enough to show he opened the file even though he never actually did." Cal looked at her. "You're baiting him. We need to see who he runs to with the information. And what exactly does the file say?" "Nothing real. It's a fabricated prototype. Looks revolutionary, sounds risky. If it leaks, we'll know exactly who can't keep their hands off it." Cal leaned back in the chair, watching her carefully. "You're playing a dangerous game. I've been doing that since I took over this company at 26. There was a tension in her voice that hadn't been there before. Not fear. Not quite. But it was close. He stepped closer, quieter now. "You trust me, right?" She turned, holding his gaze. "Yes." "Then let me do more than watch. I want to be in the room when the trap snaps." "You already are," she said, and her voice softened just for him. Later that day, Evan bit. The system flagged a security anomaly, an outbound connection from Evan's device cloaked but not erased. He'd copied the Zephyr file onto an encrypted drive and accessed an external Wi-Fi hotspot in the executive parking garage. Brielle watched the alert flash across her screen and didn't blink. "He's moving fast," Cal said, standing at her shoulder. "He's sloppy," she replied, "and greedy." Within 20 minutes, Veronica Kane called an emergency meeting. That was the moment Brielle knew. "She's making her move," Brielle whispered. "She thinks she has enough to force my hand." Cal crossed his arms. "She's about to find out she doesn't." The boardroom was polished glass and silence. Veronica sat at the far end, flanked by 2 other board members, both of whom had received carefully manipulated updates in the last 24 hours, showing discrepancies in leadership missteps in internal security and whispers of instability. All orchestrated by Veronica, all baited with just enough false truths to embolden her. Brielle entered calmly. No papers, no laptop, just presence. Cal stood at the back wall, still and unreadable. "Ms. Langford," Veronica said coolly. "Thank you for joining us. You asked for this meeting, Veronica. What is it you needed so urgently?" Veronica leaned forward, steepling her fingers. "We've received word of a troubling data breach. Highly sensitive project files were accessed and—" "Stop," Brielle said, voice sharp. "Let's not pretend you're here to warn me. You're here to corner me." Veronica blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me, I created the file. I planted it. I set a digital fingerprint trap. And your golden boy Evan walked straight into it." A heavy pause. Veronica's mask faltered just a crack. "You created the breach to catch the real one," Brielle said. "You've been feeding him. Pushing him. Using him to destabilize me. That's absurd, is it?" "The metadata says otherwise. His device accessed the Zephyr prototype using credentials only available from your shared permissions folder, which means either he hacked your profile or you gave it to him." Silence fell like a dropped glass. Brielle continued, voice low and clear. "I've already submitted the report to legal and compliance. But this meeting, this was for you. I wanted to see if you'd deny it, deflect it, or confess." Veronica's cheeks flushed a shade too red. "I've spent the last year rebuilding this company," Brielle said, standing taller now. "You've spent the last 3 months trying to tear it down from inside. You gambled that I wouldn't notice, that I was too distracted." She looked to Cal. "And you were almost right." Veronica rose from her seat, collecting her files with trembling fingers. You don't have the votes to remove me from the board. Maybe not, Brielle said. But I don't need the board to revoke your internal clearance. You'll still have a seat, but you won't be anywhere near power. Veronica opened her mouth, then shut it again. She turned and left. The door whispered shut behind her. The boardroom remained still. Cal was the first to speak. That was clean. It had to be. Brielle finally sat, releasing a breath she'd held too long. If I showed any weakness, she'd have pounced. You didn't. You were composed. Scary, even. She looked at him then. Really looked. I was terrified. He moved closer until the room was just the two of them. You didn't look it. Because you were there. The words slipped out quietly, like they'd been waiting. Cal didn't respond right away. He just reached for her hand. Nothing dramatic, nothing showy, just fingers resting on hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned just slightly into the quiet. For the first time in a long time, Brielle Langford didn't feel alone in the room. The next morning, the office was quiet in the way a storm cellar feels before the wind finds it. People smiled a little tighter, moved a little quicker, and avoided eye contact with Cal, who walked beside Brielle down the executive wing like he'd been there forever. Veronica's absence left a vacuum, and vacuums pulled everything toward the center. That center was Brielle now more than ever. She walked with calm precision, as if the events of the boardroom hadn't shaken her, but Cal knew better. He saw the way her fingers flexed when they thought no one was watching. The way she hesitated just a breath before opening her office door. Trust was a strange currency here, and power was never freely given. Inside her office, she exhaled and dropped her bag onto the chair. Legal's finalizing the memo, she said, walking to the window. It'll go out this afternoon. Clean break, public-facing language, no drama. You think people will buy that people want neat endings, especially when the truth is messy. Cal sat across from her, hands resting on his knees. You okay? Her answer was a long silence. Then she turned. I thought I'd feel victorious. I don't. I feel exposed. Like everyone's watching to see if I flinch now that the immediate threat's gone. You didn't win because you were perfect, Cal said gently. You won because you were willing to be seen and still stand anyway. That made her pause. I'm not used to being seen, she admitted. Not like this. You think I see too much, I think you see just enough. And that's terrifying. He let that hang between them, letting the emotion settle like dust after a whirlwind. Then he said, Maisie asked about you this morning. That made Brielle blink. She did. Wanted to know if you'd be at the Winter Festival this Friday. Said I should invite you. She's doing a solo part in the school play. A flicker of something warmer crossed Brielle's face. She wants me to come? Cal smiled. She said you looked like the kind of lady who never eats enough funnel cake. That got a laugh. Soft and real. I don't, Brielle admitted. I never do those kinds of things. I always tell myself I'll go next time. Then maybe next time is now. She didn't answer right away, just looked out the window for a moment, the weight of years in her posture. I've spent so much time building walls, telling myself they were doors. Cal stood, walked over to where she was. And now I wonder what I missed while I was proving I could do it alone. He reached for her hand slowly, like every movement mattered. She didn't pull away. Their fingers locked together gently. You didn't miss it, he said. You just found it later. Their eyes met. For once, no tension, just breath quiet and steady. A knock came at the door. Brielle sighed and stepped back, smoothing her blouse like a curtain had dropped. Come in. Luis, the longtime building supervisor, peeked in. Apologies. Just wanted to confirm tomorrow's security sweep. We're upgrading a few of the remote access panels. Thought you'd want to be informed directly. Thanks, Luis. Appreciate it. He nodded, gave Cal a curious glance, then disappeared. She turned back to Cal, eyebrows lifting. "Security sweep standard," he said. "But maybe check what areas they're upgrading." Might not be coincidence. Brielle moved to her tablet, pulling up the work order. Her brow furrowed. "This section isn't on our usual access list. It's an old server room, disconnected after the merger. Why touch it now?" She didn't answer, just tapped into the file logs. And there it was, 2 entries from last week, after hours, both tied to temporary badges, no names attached. Cal's voice lowered. "You think Veronica had a backup plan, or someone else is using the chaos she left behind?" Their eyes met again. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "No," Cal agreed. "It's just beginning." And somehow both of them knew that the story unfolding wasn't just about boardroom betrayal or hidden files. It was about what came after survival. Who you became when the mask finally cracked, when your heart stopped hiding, and when the people still standing beside you didn't flinch at what they saw. The cold snap hit Savannah overnight. By morning, the fountains downtown had a light crust of ice around the edges, and little clouds of breath curled from the mouths of people rushing down sidewalks in scarves and gloves. It was the kind of chill that didn't just settle on your skin, it got into your bones. Cal felt it the second he stepped out of his truck, Maisie's backpack slung over one shoulder. She clutched his gloved hand, hopping every few steps as they crossed toward the school. "You sure you don't want to wear the thicker coat?" he asked, pulling it out of her backpack as she skipped. "Nope." She grinned. "The sparkly one's luckier." "And it's play day. I need luck." He gave her a look. "You know it's just the rehearsal. It's the dress rehearsal. That's the real test." Then she added, like it was just a passing thought, "Is Brielle coming?" Cal paused, bending slightly to zip up her coat anyway. "I asked her. She's trying to shift some meetings." Maisie smiled like that answer was good enough. "Tell her I saved her a seat, next to me. At lunch." "Pretty bold of you. She likes funnel cake. That means she's good." Cal watched her jog into the building, her ponytail bouncing like it had its own rhythm. Then he turned and headed to Langford Technologies, unsure what the day would bring, but knowing one thing for certain, nothing was done yet. When he reached the building, Brielle was already in her office. She looked up when he entered. "I didn't sleep." He shut the door behind him. "Server room kept you up?" "No." The memory of what I didn't see sooner did. He walked to her desk. "You're not responsible for every blind spot. I am if I let them exist." Her tone wasn't sharp, just tired. Deep, tired. The kind that sits in your bones and doesn't leave with coffee. She turned her screen toward him. "I had the old server logs decrypted. Whoever used that room, they knew exactly what they were after. They accessed employee records, not current ones, archives, things we stored after the acquisition 3 years ago. What kind of records? Personal background checks, financials, old NDAs. But here's the part that doesn't make sense. Half the files accessed had nothing to do with leadership. They pulled janitorial records, maintenance staff, support." Cal frowned. "Why, that's what I'm trying to figure out." Then she clicked another tab, revealing a scan of a personnel form. Cal leaned in. His name was at the top. "I didn't know they kept this," he murmured. "They shouldn't have." "It was from the private background check I did before I offered you the full-time contract. You passed, obviously. But it was marked confidential. It should have never ended up in archived systems, which means whoever pulled this went digging for it." She nodded. "Someone's not just watching me now. They're watching who I trust." Cal stepped back. "And if they're trying to use me against you, then they're going to be disappointed." He hesitated. "Unless they know something I don't." Her eyes snapped to his. "Is there something I don't know?" He held her gaze. I was never just a janitor, Brielle. You already figured that part out. But I wasn't just a coach either. I used to work with a private consultancy. Risk assessment, behavioral profiling, mostly for high-stakes acquisitions, executive transitions. Quiet things. She didn't interrupt. I left after Maisie's mom passed. I didn't want that world anymore. Too many lies dressed as solutions. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed a job, not a confession. And I didn't want you thinking I showed up with some hidden agenda. She stood, walking slowly to the window. The silence stretched, then softly. But you did show up. Exactly when I needed you. He moved beside her. Not as a plant, not with a motive, just tired of hiding too. She looked at him then. Her eyes weren't angry, just searching. You think whoever's behind this knows about your past work, maybe? Or maybe they're just trying to shake your foundation. They're doing a good job. He gently touched her hand. Only if you let them. A knock came. Luis again, holding a tablet. Sorry to interrupt. Something you should both see? They followed him down to the lower level near the back-loading corridor, where old tech got stored and forgotten. He tapped the screen. Security caught someone loitering in this area after hours. No clear face. But look at the tag. The blurry figure wore a maintenance badge. Brielle stiffened. That's not ours. Cal nodded. They're posing as support. Luis frowned, and they knew which cameras to avoid. Whoever this is, they've done this before. Brielle took a breath. We need to talk to every contractor, every vendor. Today. Quietly. I want to know who was in this building between midnight and 4 a.m., the last 3 nights. Luis nodded and disappeared. When they were alone again, Cal looked at her carefully. You still going to the festival tonight? I should stay. You've said that 100 times. She hesitated. Then, you think it's safe? I think if we're always waiting to feel safe before we live, we'll wait forever. She gave a half smile. Maisie saved me a seat. He smiled back. Next to her. At lunch. Her voice softened. That girl. She makes this life look simpler than it is. She makes it feel worth showing up for. Brielle didn't say anything right away, but when she looked at him again, her walls had lowered. Just enough. I'll be there. Just don't let me forget how to be normal when everything else feels like war. I won't. And in that moment, with nothing resolved and everything at risk, they stood together anyway. Because sometimes survival isn't the victory. Sometimes the real win is choosing not to run. The school auditorium was packed with folding chairs, tinseled backdrops, and the hum of too many parents trying to silence cell phones. On stage, a makeshift winter village sat under soft yellow lights, glitter sprinkled and crooked in the charming way only elementary school plays could be. Cal sat in the third-row center aisle, tie slightly loosened hands resting in his lap. Maisie had peeked through the curtain twice to make sure he was there, her little face lighting up both times. Her part was small, but she'd memorized every single line, including those that weren't hers. Next to him sat a space he'd quietly saved all evening. He'd looked at it more than once, checked the time, tried not to think about what it meant if she didn't show. And then she did. Brielle slipped in quietly between acts, dressed in a dark wool coat scarf, tucked neatly at her throat. Her hair was swept back, but her eyes carried the weight of the week. Still, when she saw Cal, and he gave her that small nod, the one that said nothing, and everything she exhaled, like stepping into a room where she wasn't expected to lead or defend. Just be. You're here, he said under his breath. I didn't want to be late, she replied. But I almost was. He raised a brow. There was a note on my windshield, she whispered. His body went still. What did it say? She pulled a small folded square from her pocket and slid it into his hand beneath the row. Cal opened it with careful fingers. One line. Block letters. You're looking in the wrong direction." His eyes scanned the rows behind them, the exits, the corners of the auditorium. Nothing unusual, just parents and teachers and the smell of peppermint from someone's candy bag. Brielle watched him calm on the surface, but her hands were clenched in her lap. "I almost didn't come after that," she said quietly. "But you did. Because if I let them scare me out of this, they've already won." Cal folded the note and slid it into his jacket. "We'll handle it. After. For now, Maisie." As if on cue, the lights shifted. The small curtain opened. There she was, front and center paper snowflakes dangling behind her. She wore a silver scarf over a white sweater and held her lines like they were made of crystal. When she spoke, the auditorium softened. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. She had her father's focus. And something of Brielle's poise. Cal felt a lump rise in his throat as he watched her speak, clear, proud, and glowing, in that way only kids can glow when they're doing something brave. "She's really something," Brielle whispered. "She's everything." Brielle didn't say anything after that, but she leaned just a little closer, and Cal didn't move away. After the show, there were cupcakes in the cafeteria and kids running wild in glitter-covered costumes. Cal knelt to hug Maisie as she barreled into him, laughing and breathless. "I saw you," she squealed. "And you too." She looked up at Brielle with wide eyes. "Did you like it?" "I loved it," Brielle said. "You were the best part," Maisie beamed. "I told everyone you were coming. They said you looked like a movie star." Brielle smiled. "That's a first." Cal ruffled Maisie's hair. "Go get a cookie." But only one. She ran off in a flash of silver scarf and sugar-fueled energy. Brielle exhaled. "I haven't been around kids in years. I forgot how alive they are. She brings me back to earth when everything else feels too far gone." They stood near the doorway, half in the glow of the cafeteria lights, half in the quiet of the hallway. Cal leaned against the wall, watching her carefully. "You want to tell me what the note really meant?" Brielle nodded. "I think I've been assuming Veronica was the end of the trail. But this feels bigger. Like she was just one piece. You think there's someone higher? I think there's someone quieter." Cal's jaw flexed. "You said the server room files were old, right? What if this is about more than your company now? What if someone's cleaning up after something they did years ago and you're too close to finding it?" Brielle's voice lowered. "Then I need to stop walking in circles." Cal pulled out his phone and opened an encrypted app. "I've been running a separate search off-grid, looking for connections between the names in those files. There's overlap with a holding company that doesn't technically exist anymore. Went dark 2 years ago. But someone's still pulling strings. Who? That's what I'm going to find out." She hesitated. What if they come after Maisie? Cal's whole expression shifted. "They won't," he said, every word steady. "Because I'll see them coming before they get close." Brielle looked at him, really looked. And for the first time there was something in her eyes that wasn't strategy, wasn't armor. It was fear. Not for herself, but for the one thing she couldn't protect alone. "I didn't mean to pull you into this," she said. "I'm not in this because of you," Cal replied. "I'm in this because I care what happens to you." She swallowed, eyes glistening. "And if this doesn't end clean, then we face it together." She nodded. Then, after a beat, stepped closer. "I don't know what this is between us," she said softly. "But it's the first thing that's felt real in a long time." He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He just reached for her hand. And in that quiet school hallway, with a threat still looming and a child laughing in the background, 2 people who'd spent years holding everything alone finally decided to hold something together. Snow flurries dusted the city by the time Brielle pulled up to Cal's house the next morning. Savannah rarely saw snow that stuck, but the flake drift painted the rooftops in white whispers like a secret the weather was trying to keep. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Her Aston Martin idled in front of the modest brick home, its sleek profile almost out of place in the neighborhood. Still, it belonged here because she did, even if it still scared her. She hesitated a moment before getting out, gripping the steering wheel like it might talk her out of it. Then she stepped into the cold, clutching a paper bag in one hand. Cal answered the door in sweats and a worn cotton shirt, barefoot, his hair still slightly tousled. His eyes flicked to the car behind her, then back to her. "You drove that here? I needed to remind myself I'm still her," she said, holding up the bag, "and also that I'm still me." He stepped aside, letting her in. Coffee's hot. Maisie's watching cartoons in a blanket cocoon. The warmth of the house hit her like a wave. It smelled like cinnamon and coffee, and whatever childhood was supposed to smell like. She walked slowly to the kitchen, setting the bag on the counter. "What's this?" Cal asked, peeking inside. "Pumpkin muffins, from that little shop on Abercorn." I panicked. Didn't know what normal people bring when they show up unannounced. He smiled. "You brought muffins. That's more than enough?" She took a breath, then turned serious. "I didn't just come for muffins," he nodded. "I figured." She glanced down the hall, listening to the soft echo of cartoon voices. "I couldn't stop thinking about the files last night, the names, that holding company. I had our internal team dig deeper quietly." Cal's expression sharpened. "What did they find?" "Something odd. That shell company? It's not just tied to old employee records. It's tied to real estate." Cal's brow lifted. "Like what?" "Like they purchased small office buildings under fake names, leased them to other companies we partner with. And in each one, there's been a data breach within 6 months of occupancy. Same signature. Quiet, slow. Looks like natural error until you connect the dots. And Langford was the biggest target." She nodded. "Because we grew too fast and didn't vet everything. Because I trusted the wrong advisors." Cal leaned on the counter, arms crossed. "You think this is corporate espionage? I think this is something more calculated. Personal. They're not just undermining business. They're watching who I trust, where I move, who I care about." His jaw tightened. "So they know about me. Worse, they know about Maisie, which means I can't pretend this is just business anymore." A long silence filled the kitchen. Then Cal said I need to take her somewhere for a few days. Brielle's eyes widened. "Where my brother has a cabin up north. Off-grid. Quiet. She thinks it's a vacation. I'll make it one." Brielle nodded, her voice quiet. "And what about you? I'll come back. Alone. I can't watch this unfold from a distance. I don't want you to get hurt. You think I haven't already?" That landed between them heavier than either expected. She turned away for a moment, then back again. "I'm not good at this. I know how to win boardrooms and write speeches that move markets, but I don't know how to say things that matter when they're human." He stepped closer. "Then let me help." She looked up at him, eyes glassy, but her voice steady. "I'm scared. Not of them. Of what this could mean. If I let myself hope." Cal touched her hand gently. "Hope's not a weakness, Brielle. It's what makes all this worth surviving." She didn't pull away. Maisie called from the hallway, wrapped in a giant blanket with cartoon dinosaurs on it. "Dad, my socks are attacking me." Cal laughed, then looked at Brielle. "You staying for breakfast if you've got room?" "For you." He nodded. "Always." She stepped out of her heels, pulled off her coat, and followed him into the cozy kitchen. No press, no tension, no boardroom lights, just warmth. And the fragile, flickering thing between them that looked suspiciously like love, if only they dared say it out loud. The scent of maple syrup and warm cinnamon lingered in the kitchen, faint against the laughter coming from the living room. Maisie had convinced Brielle to play a board game with her, some chaotic mess of plastic pieces and spinning dice, and the two of them sat cross-legged on the floor, laughing in sync, as if they'd always belonged in the same room. Cal stood just out of view, leaning against the doorframe, coffee in hand. The sight was simple, but something about it made his chest ache. He hadn't seen Brielle this unguarded before. Her smile wasn't measured. Her posture wasn't perfect. She was just here, and she looked good like that. Real. Maisie squealed, throwing her hands up. "Ha, I beat you!" Brielle raised an eyebrow. "You did not. You bent the rules. I adjusted them. That's what innovators do." Brielle laughed. "You've been reading my speeches." Cal finally stepped into the room, grinning. "She's got your ambition and my stubbornness. We're in trouble." Maisie looked at both of them and smirked. "You're both gonna miss me when I'm famous? You already are," Cal said, brushing her hair back with a soft smile. "To us." She beamed and then scurried off to grab a snack. Brielle sat back, legs stretched out now, the laughter slowly fading into something quieter. Cal sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder. "You really think it's safe for her to go with you?" she asked. "I do," he said. "I've already got the security routes planned. The cabin has no connection to Langford. It's out of the digital grid. There'll be ghosts until this is over." She nodded slowly, her fingers playing with the edge of a couch cushion. "I used to think distance protected people," she said, "that if I kept them away from my world, they'd be safer. But then, that didn't stop any of this, did it?" Cal turned to her. "No, because your world found them anyway. That's not on you. I just hate that she has to hide to be safe. She's not hiding. She's going on a winter break with her dad, and she gets to come back knowing she's more protected than most kids ever will be." Brielle looked at him. "And what about us?" he exhaled. "That depends on how much you're willing to trust me." She gave a small, sad smile. "I think I already do. That's the problem." He took her hand gently, threading his fingers through hers. "That's not a problem, Brielle. That's a beginning." She didn't pull away this time. She let her head rest lightly against his shoulder, like her body finally gave in to something her mind had been wrestling with. For a few minutes, the silence between them was tender, full of unspoken things. Then her phone vibrated. She reached over and read the message. Her eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Cal asked, straightening. "It's a ping from the Langford network. One of the flagged proxy accounts just made a login attempt, but not from Savannah." His face shifted. "Where, DC?" She showed him the screen. "Someone just tried to access our investment arm through a VPN, registered to a government consulting firm." Cal leaned forward. "That's not some random actor. That's someone with institutional ties." Brielle's expression darkened. "They're not just trying to expose me. They're trying to leverage Langford's public trust to bury something. If they can discredit us at a federal level, we lose everything. Or Cal said they're scared you're getting too close." She stared at the phone a moment longer, then slowly placed it down. "I need to go back in," she said. "Today. Brielle." "No, listen. If I don't move fast, they'll spin this first. They'll leak fake documents. Frame it like we've been manipulating data, and the press will eat it up." Cal didn't argue. He just looked at her with that steady gaze. "Then we do it together." She looked up at him. "You'll meet me there, I'll do better. I'll already be inside." She blinked. "You have access. I never revoked the emergency admin codes from the cleanup work last year. They're buried. Not even IT knows they're still active." She let out a breath somewhere between impressed and shaken. "You really did plan for everything." "I planned to protect what mattered." They stood together, already moving in sync now. She grabbed her coat from the hook. He reached for her keys, checking the fob. Maisie appeared in the hallway, mouth full of crackers. "Where are you guys going?" Cal crouched beside her. "Hey, sweetheart, remember that winter break we talked about?" She nodded slowly. "It starts a little early. We're going to see Uncle Jared tonight. Snow and sledding and hot cocoa. Just you and me." Maisie blinked. "Now right after we pack." She looked over at Brielle. "Are you coming too?" Brielle crouched next to them. "I wish I could. But I've got to fix some things first." Maisie studied her, then nodded solemnly. "Okay. But promise you'll be there when I come back." Brielle's throat tightened. "I promise." Maisie hugged her hard, small arms around her neck. "You're good at muffins. And other stuff, too." Brielle laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "Thank you, Maisie." Cal stood, picking up his daughter. "We'll call you from the road." And as they left, Brielle stood alone in the doorway for a beat, watching them disappear into the crisp morning light. She didn't feel like the girl in the glass tower anymore. She felt like someone who had something to lose. Which meant for the first time in years, she also had something to fight for. Langford's downtown office tower stood tall in the cold morning light, its glass panels catching the silver sky like mirrors too proud to flinch. From the outside, everything looked polished, efficient, untouchable. But inside, something had shifted. Brielle stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor, wearing a charcoal coat and a quiet fire behind her eyes. No assistant trailed her. No publicist, no board member. Just her moving through the glass corridors with purpose and clarity. She passed people who offered tight nods and forced smiles. They felt the storm coming, could sense the current in the air. But no one knew what direction it would hit from. She didn't stop at her office. Instead, she walked directly to the secured IT suite tucked behind the operations wing, a place most executives never entered. One of the tech leads, a wiry guy named Darren, looked up from his monitor, startled. "Ms. Whitaker, everything okay? I need full system visibility, no filters. No, admin-level logs from the last 72 hours, and I want to see every outbound packet from our firewall." Darren blinked. Has something happened?" She handed him her access card. "Just pull it." 10 minutes later, the data scrolled across a wall of screens, lines of code, blinking indicators pings from servers Brielle hadn't thought about in months. Then she saw it. A string of file requests sent to a mirrored backup, one only used in case of a total system failure. Buried so deep that even most of the IT team wouldn't know it existed. And those requests had come from an account with legacy credentials. Her own. Except she hadn't logged in. "Someone cloned your session?" Darren murmured, sweat forming at his brow. "This isn't some kid with a stolen password. This is someone who's been inside. They know how our infrastructure breathes. Can you trace it already doing it?" A silence fell between them as code flashed on the screen. Then Darren stiffened. "I've got a return ping. This is routing back through a ghost node, Washington, D.C. side, government hosting network." Brielle's jaw tightened. "Same as the last one." He nodded. She stepped back, thinking. The pieces weren't scattered anymore, they were stacking. Someone wanted to use Langford systems to back-channel through federal systems. Someone with the kind of access only money or power or both could buy. And someone inside this company had made it possible. Her phone buzzed. It was Cal. "Check your office. I left you something. Don't panic." She didn't wait. She walked calmly through the hallway, reached her corner office, and stepped inside. Everything looked untouched. Her chair, her desk, the sunlight through the window. But on her desk was a brown envelope with her name in sharp black marker. She opened it. Inside was a single printed sheet and a photo. The sheet detailed a transaction, one of Langford's early acquisitions, a small tech security firm that had quietly gone under a year later. The photo, though, was the gut punch. It was a candid shot, grainy, but clear of Veronica, and a man Brielle didn't recognize. They were in a restaurant, their heads close together, laughing. And the date stamp was recent. Far too recent. She sat slowly staring at it. Veronica had claimed she was working alone. She'd lied. Her phone buzzed again. He's not who he says he is. A second text followed from Cal. I'm en route. I traced the financials. That company was funneled through 3 other shell firms. All of them tie back to someone on your board. Brielle's heart dropped. She turned the photo over. A name was scrawled on the back. Raymond Callahan. Her throat went dry. Raymond, board treasurer, trusted for over a decade. He'd mentored her father, dined in her home. She called Cal. Where are you? She asked. 10 minutes out. Jared's watching Maisie. They're safe, her voice cracked. It's Raymond. He was behind Veronica. Maybe even more than her, I figured. His name came up on every wire transfer I chased. Why would he do this? Because Langford was never just a company to him. It was leverage, and you're the threat. You don't owe him anything. You don't play the same game. She sat in silence for a moment. Then, he's in the building. Don't confront him yet. We need evidence that'll hold. Don't give him a reason to shut it all down. I'm done waiting, Cal. I know. Just let me get there. She hung up, heart pounding. Every inch of her wanted to walk straight into that boardroom and throw the photo on the table. But this wasn't just about being right. It was about protecting everything they hadn't destroyed yet. Her career, her people, her chance to finally lead without a shadow. She sent a message to legal requesting an emergency compliance audit. Quiet. Internal. She flagged Raymond's name without explanation. Then slowly she rose from her chair and looked out the window. The snow had picked up again, barely visible but falling just the same. Behind her, the door creaked open. She turned. Raymond stood in the doorway, smiling. Busy morning. Her face didn't change, just clearing the fog. Well, that's good, he said, stepping inside. Because I think we need to talk about the future of this company. Brielle nodded once. Yes, she said, voice steady. I believe we do. The boardroom felt colder than it should have, even with the morning sun pouring in through the tall windows. Brielle sat at the head of the table, flanked by empty seats and silent screens, the hum of tension replacing the usual drone of air conditioning. Raymond stood across from her, leaning casually on the back of a leather chair, as if this were just another quarterly meeting. His suit was pressed, his tone light. I've always admired your grit, he said. Truly, your father would have been proud of how far you've brought Langford. But you're getting emotional. You're letting whispers make you paranoid. Brielle didn't flinch. I'm not emotional, Raymond. I'm prepared. He chuckled, slow and patronizing. Prepared for what exactly? She tapped her tablet, projecting a document to the wall screen. It was the full financial trail. Every shell company, every off-book transaction, all tied to the acquisitions he pushed over the past decade, each one designed to redirect control under the table. He stared at it. His mouth twitched just barely. You think this proves anything, he said quietly. I don't think she replied. I know. Legal knows. So does the audit committee. I submitted it all 3 hours ago. You'll be getting official notice from the SEC by tomorrow morning. His smile faltered. You used this company like a front, Raymond, she continued. You used me to mask it. But the moment you underestimated me, that's when you lost. There was a long pause. Then softly, you don't walk away from this clean. You get that, don't you? Brielle stood. I'm not walking away. I'm standing still. You're the one who doesn't get to stay. Just then, the door opened. Cal stepped in, dressed in his usual calm, dark slacks, fitted shirt, and the quiet weight of someone who'd seen more than most. His eyes met Raymond's and the energy shifted. "I think we're done here," Cal said, voice low but clear. Raymond didn't argue. He didn't speak. He just turned and walked out, the echo of his shoes fading with each step, each one further from power, from control, from everything he'd tried to bury. When the door closed behind him, Brielle finally let out the breath she'd been holding for days, weeks, maybe years. Cal walked to her, gently placed his hand on hers. "It's over," he said. "No," she whispered. "It's just starting." The hours that followed moved fast. Legal teams confirmed the filings. Communications drafted the internal memo. And Brielle stood in front of every Langford employee on live stream in person, in every conference room, and told the truth. Not the polished kind. Not the spin. The kind that earns trust. There was a breach of integrity, she said. Voice, steady eyes, unwavering. And we caught it. We didn't bury it, we exposed it. Because transparency isn't just a value on our wall, it's how we protect each other. From here forward, Langford will be built on earned trust, not inherited power. The applause was slow at first. Then it grew. Not because the speech was perfect, but because the people in that room had been waiting to believe in something again. And she gave them reason. That night the snow returned, light and soft like a closing curtain. Brielle sat on the front steps of Cal's house, arms wrapped around her knees, her coat pulled tight. She stared at the sky, letting the flakes settle in her hair. Behind her, through the window, she could see Maisie inside with a bowl of popcorn and a cartoon playing. She didn't hear Cal come out until he handed her a mug of tea, still steaming. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "I don't really know what to feel. You don't have to know. You just have to let yourself feel it." She looked at him, eyes softer than before. "I spent my whole life trying to be untouchable," she murmured. "Turns out all that did was keep the good things out, too." He sat beside her, their shoulders brushing. "You let the right things in now." She glanced through the window again, smiling. She asked if I was going to come to her school's spring concert. Cal raised an eyebrow. "Are you? I told her I'd sit in the front row. With extra funnel cake this time." He laughed, then turned serious. "She really likes you, you know? I really like her," Brielle said. "And you." The words weren't planned. They just fell out soft, but real. He looked at her eyes, searching hers. "Say that again." She hesitated just a second, then leaned her head against his shoulder. "I like you, Cal. I like who I am when I'm with you. I like who you are, how you see things, how you protect what matters." His hand found hers. "I like you too, Brielle," he said, voice low. "More than I ever planned to." She smiled, closed her eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to prove anything, or fix anything, or be anyone else. She was just there, with him, with the snow falling, with something that felt a lot like hope, maybe even love. And that was enough.